When we're young, it's likely that we try a couple sports here and there to test what we like. So as a kid, most of my friends were into soccer, basketball, softball, but I was never really into the more traditional sports because, I was different, and I ended up falling in love with karate when I was around 6 or 7. I kept up with it and practiced for years, and finally I passed the last test and was able to compete nationally. Naturally, my ego shot up, and I told myself that I just had to win. I spent all of my time prepping for this tournament, and I mean all of it. I definitely spent a lot of my time convincing my parents to dry clean my little uniform, take extra lessons, and make sure I had the right color Gatorade stocked up in advance. Blue. When the day of the competition rolled around, I was feeling pretty good. But when it was my turn to do my routine, I stepped up to the mat and turned the wrong way, and ended up doing the entire thing backwards, facing away from the judges. There's me and there's the judges. And I didn't even realize what I had done wrong until after we all got our scores back, and mine were significantly worse than all my little karate friends. Frustrated and confused, I asked one of the judges what I had done wrong, and he explained to me what had happened. He said to me, "Don't worry about it. You just didn't know what you didn't know." Now, I was around 9 at the time, so I thought this is about the weirdest thing he could have said to me. I didn't truly realize the value of his statement until much later. Throughout life, we are led to believe that there are things we know and things we don't know. And when we learn the things we don't know, we are educating ourselves. But what does this even mean? To me, being educated has this connotation of being complete or to know everything. But if we know everything or think we know everything, where are we going to find the curiosity to learn anything new? As a society, we have adapted the word uneducated to mean something negative. But to me, being uneducated just means that you can be curious about what's left in the world that we have yet to learn. This past year, I had the opportunity to attend a semester school in New York. Here was the first time I began to really feel this feeling of being uneducated. Probably best I don't write that out in the school's Yelp reviews, though. It took me about a week or so to apply, but I figured my chances of getting in would be pretty slim because I didn't really know what the program was or what they were looking for. The next couple months of my life slowly went by, and I forgot about what I had done. Then one day, as I was checking my email, I noticed a message from the program telling me that I was accepted and that the first day of school with them would begin on January 25th of my junior year. Naturally, I thought of this opportunity as impossible, but for some reason, I felt this pull towards the program and towards the risk. My parents got home, and to their surprise, I was at the door begging them to let me spend 4 months away from them, away from school, away from my newly perfected junior year schedule, away from my best friends, prom, weekends, and life as I had known it, to live with 30 kids I had never met before in a freezing cold New York winter in a place that was over 500 miles away from Cary. Neither my parents nor I knew how it would be possible for me to go, but I was so curious about it that I made my decision to leave silently the second I found out it was possible. And luckily, with a little more convincing and a couple more meetings with my college counselor, I was packing up to go a little less than a year later. Moving to New York was an unexpected diversion from the traditional path already carved out for me. In today's day and age, it's easy to believe that grades, clubs, volunteer hours, and a high SAT score are the only attainable factors of a successful future. While we're busy being educated, we know that it is okay, however, to be curious, at least from a safe distance. Ask questions, we're told, but we're rarely told to go out and find the answers for ourselves because that involves a risk of failure. Many people believe that the only way to break out of this cycle is to discover things they've never seen before or to become more cultured in some way. However, this means that curiosity is limited to those who have the means to spend money on experiences or travel, when in reality, curiosity can be experienced right in front of you. Curiosity is a currency in and of itself. Everybody has it, you just have to be open to it. You learn the most from your curiosity when your curiosity may result in failure or consequences. My choice to leave home, for example, was a huge risk, not only because I knew I'd be missing out on a lot, but also because I had no idea what this choice would do to my future. When I left, I had a lot of uncertainty about pretty much everything. I was afraid that I would have no idea what I was doing in school, that my dog would forget about me, and that my brother would claim my room and everything in it, except for maybe my clothes and makeup. I was afraid that nothing about home would be the same when I got back. But despite this, my curiosity drove me to make that decision, trusting that the positive outcomes would outweigh the negative. So the question is, how can we discover curiosity in everyday life? Both at Cary Academy and in my semester school, I've been encouraged to embrace the questions rather than pursue the answers. We are taught to break out of our comfort zone and take risks, even if we are unsure about what the outcome might be. One Saturday afternoon, I was working on a group project in the Bronx where a couple of my friends and I spoke with a couple people about current issues within their communities. But one of those memorable conversations I had was with a man named Mason, who worked in a local garden with Rikers Island prisoners on parole. Mason told me that he dropped out of high school his freshman year to help support his family, but the level of knowledge he had about everything we talked about was incredible. He told us that he spent at least an hour or so per day in the city, simply walking around, letting his curiosity speak to him, asking questions until he felt he had learned something new. That day, I came to realize that there was something so wrong about society labeling people like Mason as uneducated, as he had figured out the key to truly learning and experiencing faster than I or any of my classmates could have. We learned during this time that sometimes you can learn a lot more just by going out and exploring tough questions on your own, talking to and asking questions of the people in your community or school setting, than you can behind a computer or a screen. We learned that embracing the questions through curiosity meant that it was okay if you researched a topic and were only met with more questions about it. I can tell you from experience, it is way more challenging to let yourself be curious than it is to perform within the guidelines. It is certainly not as easy as flipping a switch and telling kids to start being curious. When my classmates and I first arrived in New York and were told to activate our curiosity for assignments, we were actually very stressed about this newfound freedom. We panicked and constantly begged our teachers to guide us on a path or give us a rubric, 5 points for this, 10 points for that, but they were insistent on letting us figure it out for ourselves. Our difficulty with this peaked during the first week of the program called Tech Pause, where we weren't allowed to access any phones, internet, computers, or even watches. One day, we were all out in Times Square with our teacher named Rachel. We were all sitting around, hanging out, and eating our lunches, when all of a sudden, Rachel got up from the table and started sprinting towards the nearest subway station. We all panicked, and after we noticed that Rachel had packed up all of her Chick-fil-A and had no plans of turning back, we realized that the teachers wanted us to make it back to campus on our own. And we realized we were going to have to navigate this. We planned out our route with a couple of 6 trains and M trains and finally found ourselves in Grand Central Station. We had 1 train ride left to make it back to campus, but the problem was none of us had any idea what time it was. We pondered asking a stranger for the time because they would obviously have their coveted technology with them. But we were in the middle of New York's rush hour, so everyone was in a hurry. Then we noticed that there was a real live person working in the information booth in the center of the station. Had that person been in there the whole time? We hadn't even stopped to look around and notice things because we had been so glued to our phones on previous days. We walked up to the man working, and he simply nodded and laughed a bit, then pointed towards an enormous clock in the middle of the station that we somehow missed. And there's a huge clock, and me not noticing it. We made it back to campus that night and came to the conclusion that we had a lot to learn about the city. And throughout the rest of the week, we were able to be more available to our surroundings without our constant connection to our technology. We are more open to interactions and connections with new people, which was the key to facilitate our curiosity even further. Honestly, all it really takes for anyone to become more curious is to look at your surroundings and ask yourself, is there more to what I'm seeing right now? I found myself in the city simply because I asked myself, is this it? And by doing this, I made myself more open to new experiences. But curiosity does not, by any means, have to be as extreme as something that would lead you to a different state. Next time you look at all the things you always see, start to explore new questions. Talk to that teacher or student you've passed in the halls for 6 years but have never truly met, about school or anything else. Sign up for that class, elective, or semester school that piques your curiosity, even if it's not the perfect fit for your college application. All of these things open up our minds to new possibilities and ways of seeing the world, and the questions that come from this are endless. Placing the value of the things we don't know and are curious about above the things we know might just make us better off in the long run. I've never been more confident in my knowledge about something than I was about my first karate routine 8 years ago. And look how that turned out.